Good morning. It's October 26th. Today, we celebrate Omani Youth. Happy Omani Youth Day. In celebration of today, I thought I would share a recent conversation I had with the students from Dr. Hashil Al Sadi's class. The discussion was centered around how university students can better navigate labor markets. I provide my 7 tips on how to prepare for a future in the new Omani economy. I also answer some questions that I receive often, like why do you choose to work outside of Oman? Or why are your videos in English? So enjoy and leave a comment about which tips resonate with you the most.
I guess we need to make a start. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce everybody to Dr. Abdullah. This is a quick introduction. Dr. Abdullah is an associate professor of economics, and he is also the director of the Center for Economic Education at the North Kentucky University, NKU. Abdullah is an active researcher, and his research falls within the areas of financial market, financial education, and also he's looking into the impact of financial behaviors on economic outcomes. Dr. Abdullah is also a recipient of the Excellence in Teaching and in Instructions Award, the Dean's Citation Award, and also other several awards that recognize his teaching ability and skills. Abdullah is a proud native of Oman, and we are also proud, Dr. Abdullah, to have you with us this evening. This is just a quick introduction, but so brief, I guess. You are, I'm sure, bigger than this, but we will all, excited to hear from you in this lovely evening. It's evening already here, and
Yes.
the floor is yours. So you take your time. Everybody is excited to hear from you, and then we open the floor for the discussions later at the end of the presentation. So everybody, ladies and gentlemen who are joining us on this lovely evening, please join me in welcoming Dr. Abdullah. Abdullah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Hashil. I really appreciate the introduction. I appreciate all of you being here. I know how valuable your time is these days. And as I was just mentioning to Dr. Hashil before we started the discussion, the world is changing. That's going to be part of our discussion today. But it's extremely exciting to see the innovation that is happening and how people are reacting to the changes. These initiatives by Dr. Hashil to include me in the presentation mean a lot to me. Your time and your presence means a lot to me. So thank you for being here. So our goal, yes. Can you hear me? All right. So our goal today is to talk to um, soon to be graduates or recent graduates from college as you transition from being a student to navigating the labor force and the labor market. What do you need to know in today's economy? And I'm going to try to anchor those in economic lessons to help you understand, how's the world changing. So once again, I'm an associate professor of economics at Northern Kentucky University, but I am also the director for the Center for Economic Education. So I work a lot in making economics applicable to people so they could understand how the economy works. I'm a big advocate of using social media to increase awareness and to increase engagement. So if you're on Twitter or Instagram, please do follow and continue to engage at my handle is at Dr. A Al Bahrani. One of the things that has popped up since the COVID situation is I've developed a YouTube channel, and the objective of the YouTube channel is to help increase awareness of economics and also to talk about some of the Omani economic policies that are being implemented. So you are the target audience of the YouTube channel. So subscribe, like, comment. I would love to hear your feedback. And if you like more traditional methods, yes, websites are considered traditional methods. Feel free to reach out to me via my website. You have access to all my research there and also some of the videos. So with that said, our goal today is to talk about how to navigate life. Sounds very broad, but we're going to anchor it in economics. Before we do that, I think it's important to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm talking about this. So Dr. Hashel introduced me as an associate professor at Northern Kentucky University, that's in the United States. I have spent most of my life in the United States. Frankly, saying it's not by choice. It's where the jobs are and where the jobs were for me and where my career took me. I still wear my, Omani hat, if you may, because as an Omani, it's always really important for me to give back to Oman and help produce the economic growth that we're talking about. So being here today is an example of something that I've always wanted to do, and I really appreciate Dr. Hajj for providing me this opportunity because it's allowing me to give back and to communicate with the future generation of Oman. So with that said, you're going to hear me talk with two perspectives: associate professor navigating the profession of economics in the U.S., and then also as a Omani and somebody that wants to give back. My role in the United States is an associate professor, but I focus a lot on outreach programs. How do we get back to the community to teach people how to navigate markets? The reality is you, myself, and a lot of people are operating in market systems, and that on average, and this is through research, on average, people don't know how to navigate markets. So what ends up happening is we see a lot of income inequality and inequality in economic outcomes throughout the citizens of the countries or the world. And to me, my true belief is that gap between the people that succeed and the people that don't or have a hard time succeeding is a good understanding of economics. So it's become my life mission to make economics accessible to as many people as possible. And also throughout this time, I have learned that one of the things that I have a comparative advantage in, that's economic terms for I do really well, is I could take complex ideas and present them in ways that is understandable for everybody. So if that's what I do really well, that's what I'm going to do. And this is an example of my conversations. So with that, let's move into where we are in the world today and what does the world look like for us in the future. It's no surprise to you, to me, the world is changing. The world is changing in ways that we had predicted, but in ways that we had not predicted. In February and March, nobody would have, or actually February, nobody would have expected for us to be in the situation that we're in right now. But from a predicted standpoint, there's a lot of things that are happening in the economy that we have seen or we knew was going to happen, but we haven't really responded to. So today we're going to talk about those implications. From an Omani standpoint, for the people in Oman on the ground right now, the world is changing even in more extreme ways. So let's talk about the economic history of Oman. When we talk about economic history, I'm going to keep it relevant. But the question that I often get, and this is a comment that I get through DMs or through comments on my YouTube channel, is how did we get to where we are in Oman right now, right? And to do that, we have to look back. So what we have here is real GDP in 100,000 US dollars from 1965 till 2019 for Oman. And what you notice is our growth in Oman has increased drastically over this period of time. But most importantly, 2002 to 2003, that was a shift in the Omani economy. Our growth increased drastically after that compared to before 2001, 2002. So if you are a researcher or if you're studying economics or history, it's really important for us to look back. What were the policies that were implemented in 2002 that created this economic growth? Was it just market response to higher oil prices? Something happened. The data is clear that something happened. For today's perspective, though, the thing that we need to take into consideration is although the economy has grown and economic growth is steep, what we're noticing on the right side of this graph from 2002 and on is the volatility of our economy is higher. Volatility meaning that the ups are more extreme, but also are the drops in the economy. That has implications on how you navigate the economy. So if this is going to remain a pattern for us to predict about the future, then we have to be ready and equipped to maintain or navigate through more volatile economy. Let's look at this graph here. What we have is break-even fiscal oil price for Oman. What does that mean? That means what is the minimum price, or what is the price where the government spending breaks even? What is the price of oil where the government spending breaks even? So let's start in 2003. Roughly, for the government to operate, break even was roughly $23 on a barrel of oil. Between 2003 and 2007, our government spending increased so that the break even is now $42 per barrel, right? So if you know about economics, one thing that increases GDP is government spending. So some of that government spending that we saw was fueled entirely by government spending. In 2007 to 2000 or in 2008 specifically, we saw the price of oil, the break-even point, go from 42 to $61, 50% increase in a barrel of oil required to operate the economy. This is a huge jump. So what happened in 2008? If you look back at your history of Omani policy, that's when the first wage increases were implemented. When was the second wage increases implemented? 2011, 2012, and we see that increase in the cost of operating. And then we reach our peak in 2015 of $102 per barrel required to operate the Omani economy. That's an extremely high number, right? And since then, we've seen a decrease in the operating cost of the economy, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. So what do you need to predict? We're going to have to get that number from $79 per barrel closer back to $42 per barrel, or what prices are today. So we're going to see more reduction in government spending, and this has implications to you, and we're going to talk about why that has implications. This is the graph that we need to spend some time on. This is the amount of external debt, Omani external debt, as a fraction of GDP. So in 2000, our debt was 36% of GDP, right? Which, think about your own personal life. If you have a loan that is only 36% of your total income for the year, that's not necessarily a bad loan. But something happened in 2011, 2012, where we saw our expenditure increase and the percent of our external debt increase drastically. So 125% is not necessarily a bad thing. What is a bad thing here is the growth rate. And that's the concern, and that's why you hear about the debt and the rating agencies and their concerns. So we need to be careful about this debt and how to minimize it. So what do we have here? We have increasing government spending that is not sustainable, and increasing debt. So what is going to happen here? We're going to see a shift in our economy from government being the main producer of goods and services and spender to individuals or private firms. So if you're preparing the future, your future and my future relies on entrepreneurship and innovation being developed in Oman, right? So when you think about your future jobs, you need to start thinking about private industry. And this was mentioned in Vision 2040, where the goal is to create a self-dependent Omani. Well, what does that mean? That means that you're going to have control of your own destiny rather than relying on the government. And if you look at the history of Oman, we are a nation of entrepreneurs historically. We were involved in business, but in the past 40, 50 years, we become extremely reliant on government to solve our problems. And you see this on social media. Whenever there's an issue, the first thing is the government should do this, right? We're going to have to change the way we think. Instead of saying the government should change this, the line should be, we need to develop a company that solves this problem. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we shift our mindset from government employees to business owners and innovators. And to do that, I have some tips, and these are tips that I talk to my students about. These apply to the US as much as they apply to Oman. The context in which you apply might differ slightly. So one, understanding markets. You are expected to navigate markets, to make decisions based on capitalism. So you need to understand how that works. So for instance, this is something that I've been talking a lot about on my YouTube channel, but everybody's was upset about the reduction in the wage scales. If you understand markets and everything that I just presented, everything that I just said indicates that wages have to fall in the economy. They have to, right? But at the same time, so will other prices. So if your wages fall and other prices fall in real terms, your life hasn't changed, but people are reluctant to take the wage decreases. Now, there's other consequences for people that have a lot of debt, but we won't get into that. But what we're seeing in the market is extremely predictable right now. But a lot of people don't understand what's happening, and we need to increase awareness about how to operate in the market. Item number two, and I applaud you for doing that. By being here today, you already understand item number two, and that is product differentiation. In economics, we believe that if you have a product that looks like everybody else's product, then you cannot ask for higher prices or higher wages in the example of labor. So what you need to do is you need to think about how are you differentiating yourself from the market. When you all graduate, on paper, you all look the same, right? You all have a bachelor's degree. You might vary in which topic you have or which subject you have a bachelor's degree in, but bachelor's degrees all look the same. So what are you doing to invest right now in your time to set yourself apart so when you go into the labor market, you look different? Because if you don't look different, you're going to get the same wage that everybody else gets. So think about product differentiating, think about building your skills, and we'll talk about investing in yourself in a little bit. So there we go. Invest in yourself. The new economy requires you to always develop your skill sets. We're moving more towards a gig economy. And what a gig economy means is that you're going to be solving a problem on your own. So you need all that skill sets, and educators know this because, in May we had to, or March, we had to switch all to online education. A lot of us needed to figure out how to develop, videos, how to host Zoom calls. Today, I learned how to use Google Meets. So you're always going to continuously need to invest in yourself, develop your human capital so you could continuously differentiate yourself from the market, but also make yourself valuable to the market. And a lot of people look at education as, hey, I'm just going to get my education and graduate with my degree. Education is a lifelong journey. I am educating myself. I graduated with my PhD in 2010, but every year I try to learn something new. I try to join courses. I try to work with other people. We need to stop thinking of education as a one-time frame, a degree or a certificate. It's a continuous journey. So embrace it, jump on it, and develop your skill set. Number four is something that is specifically for the Omani market. As we transition from a government-based economy to a business and innovation-based economy, the risk level of operating in the economy is going to increase. And one of the reasons that as Omanis, we love government jobs is the risk level is really low, right? Once you get a job, you're in the system and you keep your job for as long as you want. But when you start to go to the private sector, there's more volatility there with respect to the job. Or if you start a business, that requires a tolerance of risk. So the first thing that I would recommend is identify your risk level. The second thing that I would recommend is the risk that you're willing to take is probably not the same risk as others are willing to take. And keep that in mind, because what I find in the Omani market is the youth are actually willing to take more risks. The older generation, the parents, the aunts, uncles, and grandparents are the ones that are conservative, and they try to reduce the risk that the youth are taking. And it generates a situation where people are not taking enough risk to innovate. I'll give you my own personal example. In 2010, when I graduated with my PhD, everybody said, you have to come back to Oman. This is it, right? So everybody worked with the belief that, I am safer and everything is more, tolerable in Oman. And I still hear that language all the time. However, I had to take a risk. I had to do what I believed was best for my career, for me, for the vision that I had for myself as a global economist. And that meant that I had to find a job internationally as well. So at first, I heard a lot of people saying, no, you shouldn't do this, you can't do this. Now, people like the fact that I took that risk and they appreciate it. So think about your own risk. What do you tolerate? And then make sure that you think about what is it that is requiring you to take lower risk. Sometimes our society and our culture is very, what we call in economics, risk averse. Entrepreneurship, innovation require you to take on risk and fail. And we need to embrace failure as a part of finding success, rather than saying that failure is the end part of the process. It's the first step. 5, with that said, look for the opportunities. I know the world economy is going through a really difficult time, but in reality, you are actually, billionaires are made during economic downturns because there's so much opportunity right now to innovate and solve problems. So look out there. What's missing in the economy that you could solve? So the thing that I did is I started the YouTube channel. Why? Because I saw an opportunity. I was at home, stuck, didn't have anything else to do, and wanted to still teach. So I spent time and resources to develop a YouTube channel. So, it's a business. My consulting business increased during the economic downturn. So look for the opportunities. It's not doom and gloom. There are good opportunities out there. 6, you've probably heard this before, find your passion. And, the saying in America or Western culture is, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day of your life, meaning that if you really do what you love, you don't consider it work when you do it. And I truly believe this. A lot of people think this is a cliche and it's a waste of time to say, find your passion. But in reality, each of us are individuals. There's something that you are concerned with in this life that truly motivates you to try to find that solution. So think of yourself as a problem solver. A lot of students, and I deal with this in the United States, they come to me, they say, Dr. A, I want to major in economics. Tell me what job can I get? And honestly, that's the wrong way of looking at it. You shouldn't be looking for jobs because by the time you start college and by the time you graduate college, the job landscape has changed. The problems are still there, but they're being solved by different jobs. So think about the problem that you want to solve and think about what solutions you bring to the problem. What is your value proposition here? Why is it valuable that you be part of the problem solving process? So throw the idea of jobs out of the window. Start to ask yourself, what problem exists in Oman, globally, or wherever, and how can I be part of solving that problem? And this way, you're going to have a job for life. You're going to have a career because those problems will always exist. If economic education is my motivation, my passion, then, if we move online, I still could do my job. However, if my passion was to have a job as a professor teaching in person, then I would have lost my job because that's not what I'm doing now. Item 7, we need to think global. This is one of my biggest concerns right now in Oman and around the world, is we have become focused on national aspect rather than what is our role in an international aspect. And the expat versus local divide is extremely high. And in reality, we all need each other. You need the global market as much as the global market needs you. But more importantly, if you're starting a business, the Omani market is just too small for you to be sustainable. You need to think global, right? So embrace the global move. We should make sure that we individually are competitive on a global sense. You are part of a global economy, so think about how to operate within it rather than exclude it. And right now we're seeing a lot of language about how to exclude the global market to favor the local market. And that might create some short-term gains, might make people happy here and there, but in the long run, it's going to have large consequences to the economy. Because once you close yourself off from the global economy, then it's difficult to grow. So we need to be thinking global, and that's one of the things that I want to highlight. I am close to my 30-minute cap here. So this is what I'm going to leave out with, okay? The future is in your hands. It's in my hands. But my role, the way I see it, is my role is to support you, the youth of Oman, to move on. I've learned a lot in the way that, through my experience. Some I've learned, some I've learned the hard way. So if there's any way that I could minimize your transition, or as you navigate the markets, please count on me. It's my role. I see it as such. And this is an example of the things that I love to do. So if there's anything that I could do, please don't hesitate to reach out. You could contact me via, Twitter, Instagram. Please, if you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll be having more content out here soon. But I really appreciate this invitation, and I hope you found this enjoyable, and I look forward to our discussion and your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah, for this stimulating, thought-provoking, interesting presentation. You did cover some valuable lessons here. I think there's our students will find very useful, not only for students, but everybody here will find those those lessons useful and applicable. What I like about the lessons is that they are really realistic and they are achievable. And it's not really hard, even for like our students who are just now starting their courses in economics. It's not really hard to understand them. And I think they reflect the reality as well. You emphasize the fact that the world is changing. Everybody realizes this, and everybody should be ready to face this reality. You emphasize also the importance of stretching our comfort zone, perhaps, and stepping out of the comfort zone, starting to take risks, starting to experience failure, perhaps, which everybody, I think, should do. We all have experienced this, and I always talk to my students about my own personal experiences, and it's not all plain sailing. There have been a lot of turbulence along the way, and ups and downs and so on. The problem is that we don't really want to face those challenges, and we want just paved roads, and we want to navigate along those roads but that's not reality. Real life situation is different, and we all need to realize this. I think when you understand the world as you explain it, with all the ups and downs, that just makes things easy for people, and people will not panic. So yeah, I know that this is part of the reality. I have to face it. I have to carry on moving. And so I really found those lessons very valuable, accessible, and they are realistic, in fact. And would like now to turn to our dear audience. I've got some comments here myself, some questions, but not to be selfish though. I want to open the floor to our dear guests here today, and see if anybody would like to ask a question. Please unmute your mic, please, and go ahead if you have a particular question.
Hello. Hi, Dr. A, if I may call you that. I like that sort
Yes.
of, the ring to your name there. Yeah, hi, my name's Peter. I'm one of the teachers here in the program. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I thought that you hit your sort of speaking points very accurately in terms of, the fourth industrial revolution and the economic future of Oman. I have a couple of questions for you. When entrepreneurs are first starting out, they're sort of faced with this choice, and the first choice is, how much research do I need to do? How much data do I need to collect? How analytical do I need to be before I get started? And then other entrepreneurs will say, no, no, you can't overthink it. You just got to jump in and start. So when you've talked to entrepreneurs over the years, like what sort of advice would you give for that issue?
Yeah, that's first of all, thank you for being here. The second thing is that's a difficult topic, right? Because what you usually see is the people that are against preparation are the people that started entrepreneurship and succeeded, and they never really went through the failure aspect. And those, you know, you could call them unicorns in entrepreneurship, or, you know, people just found success naturally. The way I think of it is it's like running, right? Some of us are natural runners and it comes really quickly. For other people, they require some training. They require to build up the process. And sustainability is what I'm after. So from a sustainability standpoint, we need to increase awareness of entrepreneurship, how to understand markets, how to research, how to collect data. You know, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in Oman and in the United States, across the world, that start businesses and they haven't looked at the data landscape. And their businesses fail immediately because they have not differentiated their product. So I'm an advocate for thorough understanding of the market that you're going to get into and understanding what your value proposition is. You know, we have enough restaurants in Oman. Sorry, we don't need more restaurants, right? Unless you're doing restaurants in a very unique way that attracts the market. And you have to be able to communicate that to me. Telling me that you're selling pizza or shawarma is not enough. So it's awareness. The research is about awareness of your own product and your own business. And it's the same thing for college students. So if we're thinking about college graduates, my back got lost there for a second. All right, so same thing for graduate student or students graduating. You need to think about yourself and what's the value proposition you're bringing in. That means you need to know yourself. You need to know what your likes and dislikes are and what your value is to the company. So this advice for entrepreneurship is not just restricted to businesses, but it's individuals. And I ask that of myself on an annual basis. How am I growing? What have I learned? And like Dr. Hashid said, is him and I, we have many stories of failures, right? It's part of life. And the pressure that the market is feeling right now, especially students navigating college at this moment, is they have this perception that they can't fail. And the reason being, it's not their fault, it's my fault. It's everybody else's fault that has reached somewhere but doesn't talk about their struggles. So one of the things that I want to do is talk about the struggles I went through, the struggles others went through, so others could learn from it as well. And that applies to business as well.
Yes, thank you very much. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any other questions? Please go ahead.
So I see a question in the chat. Why did I choose to teach outside of Oman? You know, the honest answer here, since we're talking about failures over. Sorry, I'm getting some echo.
Go ahead.
So since we're talking about failures or challenges in the market, I applied to teach in Oman several times. When I first started my career, I was just never accepted. So then I had to realize I had to make a decision. What do I want to do? If one door closes, there's many other doors. And I found the door that was open and I committed to it. And alhamdulillah, I'm succeeding. So, but it was a failure for me in 2010 when I applied to several places and did not get accepted. So at that time, it wasn't a choice. At this point, it's you know, my career is going really well in the US, and I'm finding ways to work in Oman. So that's the long answer.
Thank you very much. Ayman, you wanted to ask a question? Go ahead, Ayman Hakamani.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Ayman.
Good evening, Mayman. Good evening, Dr. Abdullah. I am Mayman. This is I am now I am a student. So I will be near a graduator for bachelor in logistic management. My goal to work, I want to complete to master after provide the education service to student. I want to be lecturer.
Okay.
Tell me advice. This is for how I can develop myself, improve myself, for everything to will be good professional lecturer. That thing.
Ayman, I really appreciate your question, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your interaction actually on Twitter. My advice is extremely simple. My advice is to remain curious, to always want to know more. And if that curiosity, you start to develop it and you start to seek answers for yourself, then you'll become a lifelong learner. And in the path that you want to go after, being a lifelong learner is going to always help you develop your skills and also help other people. So there's things that I do today that I wasn't taught ever. But my curiosity just, I'll spend 10 hours one day trying to solve one little problem on my computer. And all of a sudden I learn about technology and things that have changed. So if you develop curiosity, you'll start to teach yourself. And once you realize that you could teach yourself anything, the world is yours. Because if you start to teach yourself anything, you will become, you'll have access to all information out there. And that's what the world needs, is people that are confident that they could solve a problem.
Thank you for motivation, Dr. Abdullah.
You're very welcome. Good
You're
luck.
very welcome.
If you
Good
need
luck.
anything,
If you
reach
need
out.
anything, reach out, please. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Assalamu.
Assalamu.
Excellent. I would like to encourage our students who are with us this evening to ask questions, please. This is your chance. We got an example here of an entrepreneur, let's say, a risk taker who has succeeded in his career, and he can share his lessons. And he's here actually to share valuable experience. So go ahead. Any other questions? Okay, well, waiting. Okay, Dr. Abdullah, I have a couple of questions here. You touched upon this equation of wage increase and decrease and its relationship to with the economic growth. How can we understand this relationship? Because people are nowadays here are so much concerned about the decrease in wages, but you have maybe perhaps different perspective to this. So if you can touch upon that, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. So if on my YouTube channel, I have 2 videos tackling this wage change issue. But one thing that's missing in those videos, and I'll talk about it here, is everything that we're experiencing is expected from an economic standpoint. So we have a reduction in government spending. The economy is not producing as much as it used to, right? And then you have COVID, the issues from COVID and lower oil prices. This all reduces what we call in macroeconomics aggregate demand. And the only solution here is one of 2 things. Either the government spends more, which we just said is not going to happen with the current economic situation, or prices fall, right? Those are the solutions. And when we say prices, we're not just talking about wages, but in this situation, wages is the thing that's moving first. Then the prices of other products will fall as well. So we will see housing prices fall, right? We will see consumer goods prices fall, just because there's a lot of inventory in the market and needs to be liquidated. The problem that Oman faces that's different than the rest of the world is most of our goods are brought in from the outside, okay? And those prices are not going to fall, okay? And this is actually what happened in 2008. Those prices didn't fall, but all wages in the economy were falling. So what did we do? We just pushed the wages up. And then that caused inflation. And that's why the prices in Oman from 2008, if you look at the inflation data to today, increased drastically. And the negative outcome here is the fact that we as Omanis priced Oman out of international travel. So it became really expensive for foreigners to come to Oman for travel because now our prices are really high. So one thing that we're going to see, and hopefully once COVID is behind us, is as prices fall in Oman, we're going to see more opportunities for tourism in Oman because it's going to be cheaper. And that's actually what we needed to do. But that also is going to create pressure for us to produce our own products in Oman because the external products are too high. So we need to ask from a business environment standpoint, what are we doing to allow businesses to develop in Oman? If there's a lot of issues to developing businesses in Oman, then it's going to be hard for us to create those goods and services. But we're going to see a natural move to Omani products because external products are going to be too expensive.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. Another concern of everybody here, I think, especially the students, is the future jobs. And I'm sure everybody is not worried about this. I don't know how familiar you are with the College of Economics and Political Sciences at Sultan Qaboos University and the different departments and majors.
I am familiar with the overall pictures. The details I am not. So feel free to share.
So I'm just asking about the future jobs. So who is the students who are joining university, get enrolled this year, where in 5 years' time they will find themselves with a certificate, with the degree, looking for jobs. Would jobs be different in the 5 years to come from the ones that we know now, and how students could prepare themselves for that different jobs? Thank you.
That's a great question. So the short answer is yes. The job landscape is going to look really different, and culturally we will change our perspective as well. Growing up as a Omani, the goal was always get the degree and then come work for the government, and the government job was the hierarchy job, and everything else was inferior, right? At least from a social perspective. And what we will start to see is more appetite for private businesses, because private businesses will give you more flexibility. Right now, though, for the next 1 to 2 years, it's going to be difficult looking for a job because we haven't developed the private industry infrastructure. But after that, we're going to see more movement to private industry. I believe we're going to see more Omani entrepreneurs. Your graduates are going to be more likely to start their own businesses, and that's the concept of risk. I myself, my job landscape has changed. As a professor, I also need to think about the entrepreneurship and consulting landscape. So all of us are going towards more self-dependency. And going back to everything that I talked, what are you adding to the market, and how can you take on more risks without failing too hard, but also embracing some failures? So it's a big change in the way we do things. And the people that adjust their mentality and their expectations are going to be able to take more opportunities, because the opportunities are going to be for the first movers, the first people to move into this direction. So if you're thinking about your graduation and what the future looks, I highly think, encourage you to think about entrepreneurship and your own private firms.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. Okay, back to our audience. Are there any further questions?
I have an economics question about Oman, if that's all right. So I have been reading for several years now about government spending in Oman being unsustainable over the long term. And as you know, they're bringing in a VAT next year. There's going to be this value-added tax coming in. Do you think that the currency peg will be sustainable, where we have one Omani rial equaling, it's pegged at 2.6 US dollars? Do you see that changing in the future, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so pegs are difficult. and in Oman, historically, we're pegged because our main resource is oil, and we want to be able to forecast the price of oil. The issue here is all of the actions that we are seeing is to maintain the peg at the current value, right? So the introduction of the VAT, whether you like it or you don't, is really to generate revenue. Because if the government doesn't generate revenue, then it can't spend, and the debt issue increases. And if the debt issue increases, then that puts pressure on the peg. So all the efforts that we are seeing being implemented right now are to minimize the pressure on the peg. I think we are still in good shape to maintain the peg. And just to, from an economic standpoint, what I'm looking over here is cash reserves and central bank reserves, and those numbers are still in a good position. The more we go into the debt markets, the more the pressure is going to be put. So as Omanis, our objective here should be, how do we increase spending in the economy to maintain this peg, right? And a lot of people, this is the economic / citizenship discussion. As a Omani, we need to start thinking about how to circulate more money within the Omani economy. So historically, what did the Omanis do whenever they got opportunity to go on got a holiday? They went outside of the country. Well, now maybe we could spend those riyals in Oman, right? And that's what creates things from moving. You want to buy a computer, now you could buy an Omani computer, right? So how thinking local, or buying local but thinking global, and that's it's in our hands. And one of the things that's in our hands is accepting these lower wages, because the longer that we hold off for wages, the more extreme. So some of that volatility is due to wage friction in the economy, people not being able to adjust wages. And that's why we see the ups and downs a little bit higher extremes. So for the short run,
Yeah.
we're in good shape.
Okay, yeah, because it's interesting because of the advantages and disadvantages of having a peg. You know, one big advantage is the country can attract the foreign talent because they see the currency as stable.
Yeah.
That's sort of the situation with international teachers like me. But then it makes it difficult in some ways, for the Omani government to manage debt and manage forecasting economic budgets and things like that. So interesting to hear your comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. Thanks, Peter, for the questions. Because we have our dear students, and this is, by the way, maybe forgot to mention that the course that Peter and I are in is the language course. This is what we call the EAP or ESP courses, English for Specific Purposes. And we aim at developing our students' linguistic abilities, linguistic proficiency, in order to be able to carry out their degree in the college and prosper in the future as well. What do you think the role the linguistic proficiency play in students' success? We always want to encourage them to learn English. I mean, whether we like it or not, it has to be in English. English is a medium of instruction, and it's also the language of business. Peter, I think you agree with me that we need to push on this. We need to encourage your students to improve their language, and that's the purpose of the whole course, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. It's true.
Linguistic proficiency, and how do you think, how important it is? Especially you touched on being global as well. And while you are also talking about being global, I was like considering the map just behind me, because the students, when they saw the map, they asked me, teacher, why did you change your background? I said, well, because just to give the sense that I want you to be global learners.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint. Thank you.
Dr. Hashim, this is a conversation I have often, and it's a conversation that shows up on social media often, because my YouTube videos are in English, and and sometimes they cover Omani concepts, and people that are not familiar with me will post something like, we're Omanis, why don't you speak Arabic? And in reality, Oman is just one segment of my market. I am thinking about the global sense, right? My students are in the United States. They're in England. They're, across the world. So I have to think about the language that's to reach the most people. And right now, whether we like it or we don't, English is that language. Now, are there benefits to knowing the local language wherever you go? Yes, you need to know the local language wherever you go. If you're in Oman, you speak Arabi, Omani specifically. If you are in Kentucky, I highly recommend picking up some Kentucky accents, that's just being a chameleon and being, you adapt to the environment that you're in. Just like, if you were to go to Oman, it's important for people to know the culture. Language is part of culture. But if you're thinking about how to maximize your reach to the world right now is English speaking. We could go back in history and ask why that's the case, and I'll leave that to the historians. But if I'm thinking about my global perspective, English is the language that I need to speak to survive, to feed myself. So I highly recommend that you develop your English speaking skills, but also think about the local context, right? So how are you going to use English in your local context, and when are you able to shift and maneuver? That's the more important skill. So depending on who I'm talking to, my accent changes, not because I choose, but it's through years of adapting, right? So if I'm talking to Omanis, I might say Oman as Oman. If I'm talking to an American or Australian, I'll say Oman. Even my own name, right? I mean, Dr. A is an abbreviation for Dr. Abdullah. In Oman, if I said my name is Dr. Abdullah, people wouldn't like that. So you need to know the environment in which you operate in so you can get the most out of it. And that just requires awareness, and it requires investment in those skills. Be a chameleon is what I say.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Abdullah.
Sure.
There are a couple of points here on the chat box, please, if you don't mind looking at.
Okay, so we have a point over here about the advice for starting your own business. It doesn't apply for every major. Yes, the barriers to entry are going to be higher for different segments of the market. I started off my educational career as a chemical engineering major. Starting a chemical engineering business is difficult, probably, but starting off a chemical engineering consulting business or working for another business so you can learn the skill sets to develop your own business is still existing, right? Some markets have high barriers of entry, but I'm here to tell you a secret. Markets that have high barriers of entry have higher profits, right? So those are the markets that I would actually want to target and figure out how can I get a piece of that pie rather than work for somebody else. So barriers of entry is good to keep in mind, but think from an entrepreneurial landscape. How can I be part of the business environment rather than just an employee? And I'm not using just here in the right way, and I apologize for that. Rather than thinking of an employee perspective, think as the business owner, because even in the chemical engineering or engineering market, there is a business owner. What do they have that you don't have? And make that your goal. So we have another question here. Economics is a study of scarcity. Why do we look at the situation of economy to determine our final choices? Isn't scarcity concept disappointing many entrepreneurs? Yeah, so the question, let me rephrase that in the way I understand it. Economics is the study of scarcity. And the idea here is we as human beings have unlimited wants. We always want more. But life tells us that there is a constraint. We can't have it all. So if we can't have it all, we have to make choices. And some people call that disappointing. I call that life, right? So, me being at this call right now to talk to you is a choice. By doing this, I gave up something else because I can't do two things at the same time. So that requires me to evaluate what is more important to me. And by choosing to be here, I am telling you that this is more important to me than my next best alternative. And the more we think of life as choices and life always having trade-offs, then we realize what we value. And this goes back to the conversation of policy, right? So a lot of people are really upset with wages and the change in wages or the VAT, but people are only looking at one side of the equation. What's on the other side of the equation? If you're getting this, what are you giving up, right? And once we start to think about life in these terms, then it allows us to make better choices in life. So my recommendation to you is not to think of it as disappointing or reminding you that you have to give up something. Think of it as, what am I gaining and what am I giving up? And if I'm gaining something, that's how much I value it. And it's a conversation you could have with friends, family, your teachers. When you show up to the class, your teacher needs to know that you value their time and your choice to show up, because you have a choice not to show up. Your choice to show up means that you value what they're saying. So you being here today tells me that you value my time and what I have to say. And I say thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah. Are there any other questions from the audience? If not, then we're reaching the clock here. It's the 9 o'clock almost here. I would like at the end to, on behalf of everybody else who's here, to thank you so much, Dr. Abdullah, for the time you have giving us. I'm sure you have many other things that's already like midday there. You are committed with your students. I'm sure you have classes to go to and other commitments. Thank you very much for being with us here. Just a general note to everybody that the recording of this session will be available soon on my account on Twitter. Dr. Abdullah could also have it on his as well. So it becomes available to everybody. I can't put the link right now because it takes like I think about 10 minutes for Google to generate the link to that. Otherwise, I could have just share it now. But it will be available very soon on Twitter. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah, for being with us here. It has been really a pleasure having you, and we look forward to meeting you again, learning from you more.
Inshallah, Dr. Hashel. Thank you so much for including me, and the dialogue is ongoing. It's a lifelong relationship, and inshallah, I'll see you in Muscat in the near future.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Take care. Take care.